What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Talkin Sport for Jake. Hope you're all doing well. As you can see, a little different setup today, so because I felt like changing it up. I'll probably go back to normal tomorrow, but I just felt like changing it up because, again. So let's jump right in. Let's talk about some baseball scores from yesterday. Rays beat the Dodgers 11-10. Yankees over the Padres 10-7. Tigers beat the White Sox 6-5. Yeah, Brewers over the Giants 7-5. Cubs over the Reds over the Cubs, rather 8-5. Marlins over the Angels 2-0. Mariners over the Pirates 6-3. Braves over the Phillies 11-4. Orioles over the Rangers 3-2. Guardians over the Cardinals 4-3. Royals over the Nationals 3-2. Blue Jays over the Twins 3-0. Rockies over the Mets 11-10. Mets got some more bad starting pitching. Miguel was horrible again. 6 runs over 4 innings, and bullpen didn't do the Mets any favors either. Steven Gosek came in. He gave up I think he came in the 5th inning. He gave up 3 or 4 runs, and they went to maybe Dominic Leone or something in the 6th. He gave up a run or 2. The bullpen just overworked because of how bad their starting pitching's been. With Verlander missed the first month. He's still getting into form. Scherzer's been in the other rotation. Senga's been inconsistent. Hasn't been good. He was out for a month. Haven't even seen Quintana yet. Peterson's been terrible. He's not even in the major leagues anymore. Miguel hasn't been good. So the rotation's been a mess. Their bullpen's just been overworked. So they lose 2 after the Rockies again. Lose a very high scoring game, 11-10. So I'm hoping they can pick it up soon. They're at 500. They're maybe game over. I'm gonna do the standings in a minute. Astros beat the Athletics 10-1. The Astros social media team tweeted out 10 runs in front of tens of fans because they're playing in Oakland. They're not even wrong. It literally looks like there's 20 people at the A's games now. Pathetic. Diamondbacks beat the Red Sox 4-2. Onto the standings, Tampa remains on top at 39-16. They believe they still have the best record in baseball. Baltimore Orioles continuing to play really, really well. 34-19. They're 15 games over 500. That's crazy. By the way, it's Memorial Day. Happy Memorial Day to all of you out there. Orioles are only 4 games behind the Rays. They're playing some great baseball. Yankees at 32-23. They're playing well. The Yankees are 7 games out of first place. Boston is at 28-25, and Toronto at 28-26. They're sloping a bit, but that division is nasty. Toronto's 2 games over 500, and they're in last place. American League Central, Minnesota Twins are a game over 500, but that's good enough for first place in that division, 27-26. Detroit at 25-26, a game under. They're in second, and they're only a game out of first, so a game under 500. Cleveland's at 23-29. Then you have the White Sox 22-33, playing a tiny bit better. Still, obviously, have been very disappointing in the Royals 16-38. Have been horrible. American League West, Texas Rangers 33-19. They have the 3rd best record in the American League with Texas Rangers, and they don't even have Jacob deGrom. They're putting up crazy amount of runs every night. Houston 31-21. They've hit their stride. They're still 2 games out of first place because of how well Texas is playing. Seattle 28-25. Angels are 28-26, and then the Oakland Athletics 10-45. The A's have lost 11 games in a row, and they are 10-45. They are minus 199 in their run differential. I mean, they have literally given up 199 more runs than they have scored. That's just pathetic. They're not even trying. 11 straight losses. I could see maybe in football, if you're really, really bad, maybe it's possible. Maybe in basketball, if you're really, really bad, you've seen it happen. Hockey, if you have a team that's really bad, if you have a lot of injuries. Baseball, to lose 10, 11 games in a row, it's hard to do because obviously in basketball, you're only playing what, maybe normally you're 3 times a week, maybe 4. Hockey, you're only playing what, 3 or 4 times a week at most. Obviously, football, you only play once a week. But baseball, you're playing, at least 5, 6 times a week. So you don't really see it. At some point in like a 10-game stretch, a team will, even if you're really, really bad and you play good teams and you have a lot of bad luck, you'll at least win one or two of them. 11 in a row. That's bad. National League East, Atlanta 32-21. They're in first. Miami 28-26. They're in second place, playing good baseball. Mets at 527-27. Obviously, dealing with a lot of issues. Still trying to find their stride. Phillies at 25-28. They've been underwhelming. They've had some injuries. Obviously, they didn't get Harper back till a few weeks ago, which is lucky. They felt they get him back like deep into the summer after the All-Star break. They kind of make a lot earlier than expected. Obviously losing Reese Hoskins in spring training for the year hurt, and his backup, I think his name is Darvin Hall or something. He got hurt, so they haven't really had much of a first baseman. Yeah, they're not good defensively. Then you got Washington at 23-30. Now, Washington at 23-30 is actually better than I expected. They haven't been so bad. National League Central, we got the Milwaukee Brewers at 28-25. They're in first. And the Central divisions have been pretty weak. Pirates are at 500. Now, they've come back down to earth after a hot start. At one point, they had won like 8 in a row. But still, they're right there. Cincinnati 24-29. Like, that's another team they're not playing very well. And, but, like, they're better than expected. I mean, obviously the Reds are in a bad division, so they're only 4 games out of first, besides being 5 games under 500. Still, for the Reds, their team I thought would be at least 30 games under 500 this year. 24-29 ain't too shabby for them. St. Louis 24-31. They've had a tough year, playing a tiny bit better now, but still, a lot of issues in St. Louis. They've been very underwhelming, and then the Cubs 22-30 are really struggling. It's been a major disappointment in Chicago. National West, the Dodgers 32-22. They've hit their stride. Arizona continues to play well, 30-23. Got the Giants at 27-26. They're playing well. They're back over 500. San Diego Padres have been maybe the league's biggest disappointment. There's been a bunch. The Mets. My Mets are up there at 500 right now. $377 million payroll. You're at 500. Especially the teams that they've played, they haven't beat consistently. You got, St. Louis at 24-31 is definitely a disappointment. Even Seattle, I thought would be a lot better. Last year they had 90 something wins. They made the playoffs. They lost in the second round. I thought they do at least that, if not better, this year possibly. And they're starting to play a little better, but they've been basically a 500 team this year. But the Padres, I picked to win the World Series, and they are 5 games under 500, 24-29. I don't know what's going on in San Diego. Obviously, I don't know they didn't have Tatis for a while, obviously because of the suspension for the first month and a half, but. He took him a little bit to hit his stride, but still, their lineup was still extremely stacked. They've been a major disappointment, and the Rockies 24-30. That's another team that look, they're not playing well, and look, taking 4 out of 6 from the Mets this year. The way the Mets have played isn't that impressive, because the Mets have been very underwhelming this year. But still, they're not playing well. They're in last place, but that's another team I thought would be 3 games under 500. To be 6 games under 500, come Memorial Day isn't a terrible start for the Rockies. So that's the baseball landscape so far. I haven't done this show in about 2 weeks. I was on vacation, but about 2 weeks ago, the Brewers signed Darren Ruff. Of course, he's had a kind of weird career. He had some decent years in Philly, then he kind of fell off the face of the earth, then he kind of reemerged in San Francisco. Obviously, the Mets picked him up at the trade deadline last year, trying to upgrade their lineup. He was horrible. The Mets ended up cutting him in spring training. He went back to the Giants, actually. Got to a pretty good start, but then the magic kind of fell off from there. They cut him, and then the Brewers picked him up. So the Brewers picked him up. Domingo Romano will spend 10 games for the sticky stuff, making it from they screwed up last time, and then it's what they had. I think with the Scherzer thing, I think it's they weren't sure, but they didn't want to look bad because of what happened with Ramon. But let's know. So Ramon got suspended for 10 games. A couple of guys have gotten DFA'd who aren't that great this year, but were not guys you would think would be DFA. Aaron Hicks was DFA'd by the Yankees about a week ago. He's been terrible this year. He already hasn't been good since probably about 2019. But he was DFA. He still had like another like 20 million left on his contract. He signed a 7-year, $70 million extension about 4 or 5 years ago. And it just really didn't work out. They brought him to the Bronx in a trade in like 2017 or 2018. Had a fantastic year in 2019. Hit like almost 300, had like 29 bombs, had like 100 ribbies, was one of their best players. He's had a lot of big moments in the playoffs. He hit some big home runs in the playoffs. He was always a great center fielder. But, he struggled during the pandemic year, and 2021 he struggled, had a lot of injury. He couldn't stay healthy. Last year was absolutely terrible. Barely hit 200. And he was absolutely horrible this year. Wasn't getting playing time. At one point he was frustrated that he was not getting playing time, and just a complete mess. And then he decided to cut ties. So we'll see what he does. I think at least someone will pick him up. Yeah, at least maybe as like he's still a good outfielder. He can't really hit well anymore. But someone might pick him up for depth in their outfield. Maybe as like a defensive substitution or a pinch runner. We'll see. Eric Hosmer got DFA'd by the Cubs. A former All-Star first baseman, of course, won a World Series in 2015 with the Royals. Some of that huge deal with the Padres a bunch of years ago, 8-year deal. Wasn't quite the same player. Didn't really work out for San Diego. They traded him to the Red Sox at the deadline last year. And then in free agency, he signed with the Cubs, and it just really hasn't worked out. So he's kind of wash. He's still an okay hitter, but nothing special. He can give you like 240, maybe 250, 8 or 9 homers that are 50 or 60 RBI. That's a far cry from a guy that used to be able to give you 25 and 90 every year. He's not the first baseman he once was. I feel like he can be like maybe like a platoon as a DH. Like there's worse options as a platoon at DH. He can hit against the righties, but that's like his ceiling at this point in his career. I think someone will pick him up. He's got a lot of playoff experience. He has a World Series championship. He's not. I don't think his career is like over. Like he's that bad. But he's a far cry from the guy who was an all-star and a big part of the Royals 2015 World Series team. And Hunter Dozier was also DFA'd by the Royals. In 2019, he had a really good year. And he ended up getting a 4-year extension worth $25 million. And since then, he has not been good. He's struggled to even hit 200. And it's just not been good. And Royals have a lot of young infielders over there. Obviously, you have Bobby Witt, you got Nicky Lopez, you have Alberto Mondesi, you got some guys on the cusp in the minor league. So there wasn't any room for him, so he was just DFA'd. And the Oakland Athletics fire announcer Glenn Coopier, he said a racial slur on the air. He wasn't trying to say. He wasn't trying to say. I'm not going to go into even what he was trying to say because that would kind of give away what he was saying, and the word he said is a very, very, very vulgar. And my take on it, look, I'm trying to be possibly a play-by-play announcer one day too. You cannot say words like that on the air. Whether or not he wasn't trying to say it, no matter how accidental, no matter how many times he apologizes, which he really didn't. He just kind of said like the next inning was like, hey, something came out wrong, I apologize, and just kept going. And whether or not the words in his vocabulary or not, you cannot say that on the air. There's certain things when you're as a broadcaster you can't say. And that's one of them. And either way, what he said he shouldn't say out casually out in the open anyway, or even privately. So to me, it's your actions have consequences. Not the perfect example. So his career is over. On to hockey. Conference finals. Looked like it was over about a week ago, but the Stars were able to take game 5 in overtime, and then they also game 4 in overtime. They also won game 5, 4-2. Ty Dellandre had 2 goals. Jason Robinson adds a goal. They forced game 6. Vegas leading 3-2. Game 6 is tonight. I believe at 8 o'clock Eastern time. I don't think what it is. The first 2 were in Vegas. Games 3 and 4 were in Dallas. So game 5 was Vegas. So game 6 is in Dallas. So that'll be crazy if Dallas can come back down 3-0 and at least force against them. That'll be crazy. But we'll get to some basketball, which of course we have play-in news for. Apparently also Matthews wants an extension. He's arguably one of the best players in the NHL. Not arguably, he is one of the best players in the NHL. I would say arguably maybe the 3rd best player in the league behind McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. He's got 1 more year left on his contract. Then he will be a free agent. He says he wants to get an extension done before the season. So it'll be interesting to see if they can get it done. And if not, what happens? Could he be a trade candidate? That'll be something else. So keep your eye on that. New York Rangers fired Jim Ramsey, who's been their team trainer since their last Stanley Cup win in 1994. 33 years. First of all, it's sad that my Rangers haven't won the cup in 33 years. Second of all, they fired their team trainer who had been there for 33 years. That's crazy. Rangers making a lot of changes. Obviously, they fired their coach, Gerard Gallant, after a very disappointing first round playoff loss to New Jersey Devils. And they're doing a head coach search. They interviewed Pierre Laviolette, which I'm not a fan of. He's the next Islanders coach. I don't know why we're hiring Islanders coaches as a Rangers fan. He's a typical retread. I've heard Daryl Sutter's name pop up. I know he's got 2 cups, but the game has passed him by. We saw what happens here in Calgary. He's not that good of a coach anymore. And I know there was rumors maybe Chris Knobloch, who's their minor league coach. He filled 2 years ago when Gallant was out with COVID. He was out for like a week with COVID. He was the interim coach for like a week. Did a pretty good job. And he's done a good job as the AHL coach with the Hartford Wolfpack. And I do believe I think he deserves a shot at being an NHL head coach somewhere. But the Rangers are in such win now mode. I feel like, if his inexperience is showing they're struggling, I could always veterans to have Artemi Panarin, Chris Kreider. All these guys might not take too kindly. And when we had a guy like Gallant, if he was, they're struggling, they might trust Gallant because Gallant's a very experienced coach. Only a year ago took them to the conference finals. A guy like Chris Knobloch, who's some rookie who call up from the minor leagues, if they go even to a slow start a month into the year, there might be hey, what's this guy doing here? So I don't really think that would work. I know there's an assistant from the Seattle Kraken they looked at. I don't know too much about him, but I like Dave Haxtell. I think he's a pretty good coach who he's coached under. Got to work with some good young players. I don't hate that. I'm not really sure who I want. I would rather not the NHL these NHL GMs love to just circle back and they hire the same retread head coaches every single year. I heard Bruce Boudreau, maybe is a possible candidate. I don't like. I thought he got screwed over in Vancouver. He's another retread. He's bounced around. All these guys, a lot of these guys I'm naming, I feel like could, maybe I think could get them. The Rangers have a lot of talent on the team. I feel like they could, if they go further they went this year, maybe they could win a series. But Daryl Sutter, Bruce Boudreau, Pierre Laviolette, you're not winning a cup with them, and the Rangers are in cup mode right now. So they got to find coaches that they think not only can get them past the first round, but get them to the Stanley Cup. We'll see what happens. Leafs GM Kyle Dubas has left the Leafs. They're looking for a new GM. I think it's time. You look at this team, he spent so much money on all these guys. They got a lot of talented forwards, obviously also Matthews. is a phenomenal player. Mitch Marner is a great player. Obviously, John Tavares, William Nylander. They really, I mean, they don't really have a goalie. Samson, I don't think is that great. He wasn't good in the playoff even before he got hurt. Because I think overpaid a lot of these forwards that they have. They haven't had the money to re-sign Jack Campbell, who's one of the better goalies in the league. I mean, he had a great year in Edmonton this year. Stuart Skinner, split time with him. He ended up getting a lot more time than we thought he'd get this year. But Tom, I thought, Jack Campbell had a really good year. I would have tried to re-sign him. They didn't because they just didn't have the money to do so. I mean, they finally won a playoff series for the first time in 19 years. They beat Tampa in 6 games. But then they got swept by an 8 seed. I mean, Florida's on the crazy run, and they're in the cup final now, obviously. But still, come on. Something needs to change there. I'll say Austin Matthews is an amazing player, but now he's only got a year left on his deal. Do they have the money to give him a long-term extension? And if not, could he be gone in the year? I think they overpaid Mitch Marner a little bit. I think they overpaid John Tavares a little bit. Even Nylander's on a big contract. Like, these guys are great players. Tavares a little older. Still can give you 30, 35 goals. Marner's a great player. He's a good, I think, a nice line mate for Matthews, but Nylanders are really good, but they pay these guys so much money. They don't have to 4 players. Plus, you have Morgan Riley's contract. They just don't have money to, get some, improve their defenseman corps and get a better goalie. So that's that. The Jason Spezza, whose next player played a long time in the league, was on Ottawa for a long time. His last year or two, he played in Toronto. They hired him as a special assistant to the GM after he retired after last season for this year. He was expected to take on a larger role with Dubas stepping down, but he also just left the league. So we'll see what's next for him. So definitely some changes coming to Toronto. Calgary Flames looking for a new regime. They fired their coach and their GM. They promoted Craig Conroy to GM. Conroy, he's a player for a while. I think from 1998 to 2011. He had a solid career as a player. He played for the Flames for a while. He was named special assistant to the GM after he retired in 2011. In 2014, he was named the assistant general manager, and he's had that same role for the last 9 years, and he was just promoted to general manager after they dismissed their longtime GM, Brad Treveling. Calgary definitely need to change. They're a team that, 1 year they're really good, they're a cup contender, and then they're losing in the second round, and the next year they're not in the playoffs. They definitely need a change. On to basketball. We got obviously we have an incredible comeback on our hands. The Boston Celtics win a crazy game 6, 104 to 103. Jason Tatum, 31 points and 12 rebounds. You had Derek White with a putback layup with 0.1 seconds left on the clock as time expired to win the game. Celtics have won 3 straight after going down 3 games to 0, shockingly to the 8 seed Miami Heat. They forced game 7. That was a crazy game. Both teams didn't play. The Heat played horrible. Caleb Martin had a good game. I think he had 21 and 15. Gabe Vincent played a nice game. But Jimmy Butler I know he had the big 3 free throws at the very end. And he played well in the last 5 minutes. But other than that, he was horrible. Bam was horrible. Max Strus played horrible. Lowry was terrible. I love sports, but why is Kevin Love not playing? I don't understand why Kevin Love was not playing. I mean, that made no sense. He's been a solid contributor since they signed him off the biomark. He's been good in the postseason. Why is he not playing? He played Cody Zeller over him. Even Cody Zeller played 3 minutes in the game. It's 3 minutes, but I don't know why Kevin Love wasn't playing. You got Bam Adebayo out there. We're going 3 for 11, getting blocked by Al Horford. He's just looked absolutely terrible. And Kevin Love can't get 5, 10, 12 minutes. Come on. That's terrible. Even Boston didn't play well. Tatum had 31 and 12, but 25 and 31 came in the first half. Only had 6 in the second half. Jaylen Brown was good. He had 26 26-10. He finally had a nice game. Like, Marcus Smart didn't play well. Grant Williams was awful. He was like 0 for 4, hit like 1 free throw. Al Horford was terrible. He missed like 4 threes. He had a couple of bad fouls, including the one on Jimmy Butler in the final seconds. Gave him 3 free throws with Celtics up 2 in the final seconds. Malcolm Brogdon, the 6th man here, didn't even play. He's been playing through a torn tendon, I think, in his arm, in his shooting arm. So since game 1, so he didn't play. Though they're expected to get him back for game 7, which is tonight at 8:30. Celtics didn't even play. Outside of Jaylen Brown, Tatum in the first half went off. Second half only had 6 points in his entire second half. Jaylen Brown played well. I thought Rob Williams played well. Of course, he had the head injury that he left the game, but he came right back in. Everyone else for Bulls didn't play well either. Even Derek White, who had the game-winning shot, he didn't do anything special for the Celtics. Like I remember, like I was tweeting during the game, like the Heat were playing as bad as you could possibly play. They're you got the Celtics 2 stars combined for like 50+ points, and then at one point Bam and Jimmy Butler were like 7 for 35 with 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter, and like the Celtics once or twice went up by 12, and he got right back in the game. But for the most part, the Heat were within 5 points the whole game, and and at one point they took a couple of like 1 or 2 point leads late in the game. Of course, they go up by a point with 3 seconds left, but then Smart, they played great defense on the inbound. They forced the inbound pass to Smart, put up like a tested 3, missed it, but Derek White happened to be in the right place at the right time. Another Heat guy, Duncan Robinson had a great game. He hit the 1 deep 3 late. That was a big shot. Other than that, he had 1 or 2 other threes, and that's about it. He didn't play great. He got boxed out by Derek White on that rebound. So Heat are in danger of choking a 3-0 lead, but the first team ever to do that. Teams that are up 3-0 in NBA history in the playoffs are 150-0. It's never been done. Celtics have a chance to make history tonight. Game 7 at TD Garden at home. It should be a great game. The Milwaukee Bucks hired Adrian Griffin as their next head coach. He was been the assistant coach to the Raptors. Apparently, Giannis had a say in that. I think it's a good choice. I think he's been a top head coach candidate for a while. I like the move. Obviously, Philadelphia 76ers fired Doc Rivers after he took another lead. It's like he's finally out of a job. They looked at Nick Nurse, but he pulled out of the search. They're still looking around. I know Monty Williams has been mentioned. That's a good fit. We'll see what happens. The Suns obviously are looking for a new head coach if they fired Monty Williams after a disappointing second-round playoff loss to the Denver Nuggets. They're actually interviewing Doc Rivers. I don't know why. They're also interviewing Nick Nurse, Frank Vogel, former Lakers coach. He won a championship in 2020 with the Lakers. He was also in Indiana and Orlando. The Kings assistant, Jordy Fernandez, Kevin Young, who's one of their assistant coaches, who's been a top candidate. Kenny Atkinson, who's the assistant with the Warriors. He was head coach in Brooklyn. Overall, I thought did a good job. I didn't think he should have been fired. I thought they pulled the plug a little too soon. Like Durant and Kyrie got him fired. He had agreed to be the head coach in Charlotte last year, but then pulled back last minute. Stay of Golden State. They're looking at Charles Lee, an assistant with Milwaukee, who's been a top candidate for a while. Could he get a job now? Especially now Milwaukee brings in a new head coach. Will he even be brought back? The Detroit Pistons are looking for a new head coach. I know Monty Williams. They offered him a big contract, and apparently he turned it down. Probably figured Philly and Phoenix are much better jobs than Detroit. He thinks he can get one of those 2 jobs. Why should he go to frickin' Detroit? So that's where the head coaching search is in the NBA. College Basketball Hall of Fame was just announced. It's headlined by Coach K, of course, legendary Duke head coach, Johnny Dawkins, who was a very good college player. Teller Handler was a great player at UNC. Tom Konchalski, who actually recently passed away, unfortunately. He was one of the greatest scouts of all time, big-time high school scout. And then Herm McGee, who was a coach at Thomas Jefferson University. He was known as the shot maker. He was not too well known because he didn't coach at a very well known university, but he coached for like 50+ years. He was a great college coach back in the day. He also got into the College Basketball Hall of Fame. The NBA draft lottery was revealed. I'm going to start from pick 14 and work my way up. Pelicans had the 14th pick. Raptors got pick 13. Thunder got pick 12. Magic have the 11th pick. That's actually the Bulls pick. They have the Bulls pick because of the Nikola Vucevic trade. Mavericks got the 10th pick that they tanked for. Utah Jazz got the 9th pick. We got the Wizards at 8. Pacers at 7. Magic at 6. The Pistons got screwed. They had just 17 wins, tied for the best odds to get the first pick, and then with the 5th pick. Rockets also got a real deal. They were tied for the best odds, I think, or second best odds. They have second best odds. They got the 4th pick. Portland Trailblazers get the 3rd pick. Charlotte Hornets get the 2nd pick, and the San Antonio Spurs get the number 1 overall pick, and they end up with Victor Wembanyama. I assume that's who they're going to take. I don't know why you would take anybody else. He's the best prospect since LeBron James, one of the greatest prospects in American sports history. He'll be in San Antonio. I mean, I'm just glad that the Knicks actually had a good year. Didn't have to see them get screwed over in the lottery. These lotteries, I think it's possible they could be fixed. I mean, Wembanyama, the best spot for him is obviously with the Spurs. He would have rotted away in Charlotte. He would have probably rotted. Houston definitely would have rotted away in Detroit. Portland, I would love if he went to Portland to get Dame somehow. But even Portland, it doesn't exactly have a great track record of winning really since probably the 90s. So you never know, but regardless from that, Wembanyama will be a San Antonio Spur. All right, want to talk about some other stuff. Caleb Love, who was a star college basketball player at UNC, originally committed to Michigan. He has decommitted from Michigan. He didn't have the academics to get into Michigan, so he can't play there. He's still in the transfer portal. He is not going back to UNC. I've heard there have been some big names who have looked into him. I think Kansas has looked into him. I think even Gonzaga has looked into him. So we'll see where he ends up going. Carmelo Anthony has announced retirement. Shout out to him. Great player, one of the greatest New York Knicks of all time. Over 28,000 points, 10-time All-Star. Over 25,000 points, good for 9th all-time in the NBA history. 10-time All-Star. He's a former scoring champion. Absolute great player. Was one of the greatest scorers of all time. Kind of gets lost in the sauce because he played, he was in the same draft as LeBron. He played in the same era, as LeBron and Kevin Durant and all these other guys. So, but he was a great player. I think definitely a Hall of Famer. He obviously was an all-time great college player. He was an absolute monster at Syracuse, won a national championship at Syracuse. Great player, great dude. He announced his retirement. That was a very cool little retirement speech saying that that his son is his legacy. He's at peace of not winning a championship, saying he won at life. Great player, great dude. Congratulations to Carmelo. I do not think that the Knicks should retire his jersey. I don't think he quite earned that. He never won out of the second round, which was not his fault, but the Knicks never gave him any help. I mean, what was his best team? 2013, they had Amari Stoudemire had arthritic-ridden knees, couldn't really play anymore. Steve Novak, Felton, Tyson Chandler, and J.R. Smith. That's not exactly scaring anybody, especially when you have to deal with the Heat had LeBron, Wade, and Bosh, and the Indiana Pacers had prime Paul George, and they had really good teams. The Celtics still had Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, Rajon Rondo, and Paul Pierce. They were just overmatched. Also, when he was in Denver, people forgot he was also not only we all know he was a beast with the Nets. He was a beast with the Denver Nuggets. Also that West was stacked. His teams were winning 45 games and having an 8 seed. You won 45 games, you might be top 5 in the West. Now you'd probably be like the 4th best team in the West if you won 45 games. You had the Spurs, who obviously you had Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, Coach Pop. were always there. You know, the Grit and Grind Grizzlies with Marcus Gasol and Zach Randolph and Mike Conley, Tony Allen were always really good. You know, the Dallas Mavericks with Dirk Nowitzki were always really good. You know, the Thunder at one point had James Harden, Russell Westbrook, and Kevin Durant. They were always really good. You know, they were in the finals one year. But the West was stacked. You know, he was stacked. He was a great player, had a great career, and I do believe he's a Hall of Famer. The Lakers apparently plan to re-sign Rui Hachimura and Austin Reeves. They're restricted free agents. Reeves has turned into a really good player, undrafted guy, and Rui Hachimura was a really good trade on that acquisition. So we'll see what happens there. So LeBron James, after getting swept in the conference finals, you know, they asked him, yeah, he kind of like said something, you know, so like, you know, I don't take a lot of pride in you know, making a conference appearance. You know, I've done it a lot, done it 12 times in his career. So he's and they asked him like, you know, I got to think about a lot of things, and the analyst name is like Dave McNamara or something. He's like, he asked him like, would you walk away? He goes, I have to think about it. I don't think LeBron is gonna retire. You know, I've been very, very clear on my stance on LeBron. I don't think he should be in the GOAT conversation. All-time great player. What he's done in his career is absolutely incredible. He's one of the 7 or 8 greatest players ever played, no doubt. But people, you know, some people put him, you know, undoubtedly second greatest player. Some people think he's the greatest. I think that's silly. I know him probably is the second biggest LeBron hater outside of Skip Bayless on this planet. But he is a great player. And, you know, part of the reason I don't like him, I find him kind of arrogant. Like he's definitely a big diva, and he always wants the attention on him. And I mean, he obviously he wasn't arrogant when he said it. Obviously, it was a harmless comment, obviously. But to me, that making there like, oh well, I want the spotlight on me, kind of thing. And also, every great athlete, you know, obviously most guys, you know, any sport will use NBA because since we're on the NBA subject, guys, you know, most guys after, you know, 12, 14 years, they hit, you know, 33, 34 years old. At that point, their career's almost over. At that point, you know, they just try and either if they haven't won a ring, they'll sign a cheap 1-year deal on a really good team. They'll have a lesser role and just, you know, they don't care about their stats and they'll just try to see if they can grab a championship. And they already have, they'll just sign anywhere just to play for have a couple of more fun years before they retire. But great athletes, you know, your LeBrons, and I can do a whole list of all the great players in NBA history. You know, they can play a little longer, you know, 17, 18 years, they can approach 37, 38 and still be really, really good. Every great athlete, there's a point, you know, later in their career where they, you know, don't have as great a season as they normally have in the past. It becomes clear that they're not quite the same player. And maybe their team doesn't advance as far as they usually do. You know, LeBron's guy who's won 4 championships. He's been to the finals 10 times. You know, he had won in the conference finals like 8 or 9, 10 times in a row. His teams. And then they get not only lost, but he got swept by the Denver Nuggets. He realized, oh, he realizes the end is near. He's been very vocal. He wants to play with Ronnie, who's eligible to come out of the draft next year. Of course, he just committed to USC. And he came out and said, like, you know, he's okay with not playing for him. He says, just because it's my aspiration doesn't mean it's his. So we'll see what happens. He is under contract next year with the Lakers. He's due like $45 or $47 million for the Lakers next year. Then he has a player option for 24-25. What I think he'll do, I think he plays for the Lakers next year. I think he will play next year for the Lakers. You don't know what the Lakers will do. You know, with Anthony Davis having, you know, 2 years left, and that includes a player option. You know, Austin Reeves and Rui Hachimura are restricted free agents. D'Lo's an unrestricted free agent. We'll see what they do, but I think LeBron will play for the Lakers next year. and then he will in 2024 he will opt out and be a free agent prior to 2025. And I think next year will be his last year with the Lakers because Bronny. I mean, it's kind of hard to see what kind of player he is. He's obviously got a 5-star name, but I really think he's more of like a 4-star kind of player. I think he could be like a solid player, solid starting point guard. Really good passer, good court vision, pretty good shooter, decent scorer, decent perimeter defender. I mean, like a Drew Holiday kind of guy. He can be a good player, but I don't think he's like this superstar. Like, I don't think he'll be like the first pick in the draft, but I could see him being a lottery pick. About 2 years ago, I would have said he's probably a second-round pick. And look, either way, regardless of how good he is or not, his name could get him to go first overall. If you take his name out of it, just the player itself, 2 years ago, I would say he's probably a second-round draft pick. And then as his game has grown, if you ask me last year, I would say probably he sneaks in the first round. Probably a late first round pick. Maybe he sneaks to the line, but probably a mid to late first round pick. Now I think he could be like a late lottery pick, like 12 to 14 in that area. Could sneak into the top 10, but I would say probably between like 11 to 14. We'll see what he does at USC this year. But my guess is with LeBron, he's obviously had an incredible career, 18-time All-Star, 4-time champion, 3-time Finals MVP. He's won, a championship and a Finals MVP for 3 different teams, all-time scoring leader. He's the all-time postseason leader in like every category. He's got nothing left to prove. I'm not a fan of him at all. I don't really like the dude. I think he's a fine guy. I think he's a great father to his children. I think he's a great husband. I think he's an overall good person, but I just think on the basketball court, I just don't. I think he's like I have him as like the 7th or 8th greatest player of all time. But I do not even have him like in the top 5. And I think he's a little arrogant, and I think he's a little bit of a attention whore. But he's a great player. But I think I had to guess he'll play next year for the Lakers. He'll opt out in 2025. He'll play. He'll sign probably a short-term deal with whoever drafts Bronny. He'll fulfill his dream of playing with his son. And then if he signs a 2-year deal, then maybe 2026 he plays and then he retires. And a 3-year deal, maybe he plays in 26, maybe he has an opt-out, and then he'll go from there. But the 1-year deal, I think 2025 could be his last season. So I could see LeBron playing 2 more years in retirement. I could see him playing 4 or 5 more years. Look, he's going to be 39. He's not a number 1 option anymore. But he's still a very good number 2 option. Obviously, playing another 4 or 5 years, that would take him to his 43, 44 years old. That's crazy. Even if he's not very good, I could see him just hanging around. But I do think he plays next year. I do believe he will be for the Lakers. So that's that. James Harden's obviously a free agent. I heard Philly does not want to give him a max contract. They're not ruling out re-signing him, but they want to give him a max deal. I think he's going back to the Rockets. I heard he might get a $200 million max. If so, that's pathetic. He's not worth that much, but I think that's what might happen. The Washington Wizards hire Clippers general manager Michael Winger as their team president. He's going to have a lot of power in that organization. I heard the Wizards could be very aggressive. This is a big move for the Wizards, who have been stuck in mediocrity for a long time. We'll see what happens to Bradley Beal. Do they keep him? Do they extend? Do they trade him? We'll see what happens. I heard flopping could end up being a technical foul. I hope it is. There's way too much flopping in today's game. Teams could get a second challenge if they get their first one right. That's something to look at in the offseason. Going to college, the athletic director at USC, Mike Bohm, was just fired. Originally, they said he stepped down because of health issues. Now it's coming out that he used inappropriate racial language when he was the AD at Cincinnati. So he's out of a job. NBA referee Eric Lewis is being investigated for a Twitter account. Appeared to be his, whenever people would comment about him, his account, which supposedly is him, fire back. He's being investigated for having a burner account. Also, can Sky Pippen just shut the hell up? saying Michael Jordan was a terrible player before he got there, and that LeBron's no one is compared to LeBron. He needs to shut up. He'd be nothing without Jordan. I'm sorry. He's an idiot. I can't stand him. On to the NFL. James Washington, I want to do with the Saints. The Saints get some depth at the wide receiver position. Peacock is going to stream a wild card game this year. I think it's stupid because if you don't have Peacock, you're screwed. You can't watch the game. So you better have Peacock. That's all I'm saying. Come playoff time for NFL. I heard NFL could. There's rumors they could change the procedure and how when an owner sells their team to another owner, the procedure. There was some like wonky that went on, and when with Josh Harris and Magic Johnson buying the team from the Commanders from Dan Snyder. That's why when like Snyder agreed to sell the team to Harris, like it's why it's taking as long as it has. So that could be something that happens. This happened about a week ago. I was still on vacation. Jim Brown passed away. Rest in peace to Jim Brown. He lived a wonderful life. Only played like 8 or 9 years, but he's considered one of the greatest players in NFL history, arguably the greatest running back of all time. Also was a great lacrosse player. He's considered one of the greatest lacrosse players of all time. He did a lot for he became a very famous social activist. So shout out to Jim Brown. Rest in peace. Teams can now dress for 3 quarterbacks and play what would happen in the NFC Championship. Of course, Jimmy Garoppolo was already hurt. Trey Lance is already out for the year. Then Brock Purdy got hurt. They had to go with Josh Johnson, who's obviously famous for being on like 14 different teams. He's played in like 3 different countries. You know, he was so bad to the point where they would rather Brock Purdy without an elbow ligament play, and they eventually just put him back in. If it didn't work out. Thursday night football between weeks 13 and 17 can now be flex. That's an interesting little scheduling thing. Broncos cut longtime kicker Brandon McManus, and then 2 days later, he was signed by the Jacksonville Jaguars, who traded their kicker from last year, Riley Patterson, to the Detroit Lions for a 2026 7th round draft pick. The fair catches on kickoffs will now go to 25. So if you field it at the 10-yard line, you call a fair catch, it goes to 25. I heard pretty much every special teams coordinator was against it, but the league and the player association was not. So it passed pretty much unanimously. So we'll see what happens with that. Jets backup corner Brendan Eccles suspended for a game for violating the personal conduct policy. He's a backup anyway. I don't even care. I don't even know what he did. Who knows? Arizona Cardinals release all-pro wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins. That's big news. Obviously, been trying to trade him all offseason. No one would take him because he's a little bit older now. He's 31. You know, he's had some injury. Was suspended for 6 games last year for PEDs. I mean, he's making almost $20 million a year. But he was cut. I heard the Chiefs and Bills are the favorites. You know, I can see him going to the Eagles. Well, we will see what happens. And Quinn Williams and just continue to talk about a contract extension. A couple weeks ago, I heard they were far apart, but now I'm hearing they are making progress and they are not too far apart on a contract extension. So hopefully they get that done. Quinn Williams is an absolute beast, and I would argue a top 3 player at his position. For wrap up, shout out to Brooks Koepka for winning the PGA Championship. That was his second or his third career PGA and his 5th career major. Shout out to him. Emiliano Grillo won the Charles Schwab Challenge. Charles Schwab tournament. He at 8 under par. He beat out his opponent Adam Schenk in the playoff. They played 2 playoff holes. He ended up prevailing. He wins the Charles Schwab Challenge, which wrapped up yesterday. And the next tournament, PGA tournament, will be the Memorial Tournament, which is sponsored by Workday. I don't know if I'm supposed to read that or not. The defending champion is Billy Horschel. That will take place from this Thursday through this Sunday, June 1st to 4th, and then the U.S. Open is coming up. That's on June 15th. The Memorial Tournament will be played at the Muirfield Village Golf Club in Dublin, Ohio. I was expecting it to be Dublin, Ireland. It's Dublin, Ohio. So it's in Ohio. We'll wrap up. I'm talk about some wrestling. Night of Champions was this past weekend. The World Heavyweight Championship, Seth Rollins versus AJ Styles. Seth Rollins won. He is the World Heavyweight Champion. Of course, they brought back the World Heavyweight Championship, which I'm very, very happy about. Shout out to Triple H. Great move. This was, I think it was supposed to be much later, Michelle, possibly the main event, but Seth Rollins is he's actually playing a villain in the new Captain America movie called New Captain America New World Order. And it comes out next year, and they've been filming it, so that's why he hasn't been on Raw, because he's been too busy filming that movie, and he had to go film like right after the match. So they had to move the match up. They had to move the schedule around. It was a really good match. Rollins beat AJ Styles. Seth Rollins was the guy that I want to win the world title. To me, it was really a no-brainer. Only guy you could really argue, maybe Finn Balor. Maybe he had Gunther lose, but Gunther's he hasn't lost yet, so. Seth Rollins is the world champ. I'm very happy. Becky Lynch against Trish Stratus. Trish Stratus, of course, the Hall of Famer, beats Becky Lynch. Help from Zoe Stark from NXT standout. So that was interesting. Match was okay. It was a little sloppy at times. Part of it, Trish Stratus, she's at least her 50s. It's gotta be at this point. She hasn't done a lot of wrestling recently. Overall, it was a decent match. Intercontinental Championship. Gunther defeated Mustafa Ali. It was a pretty good match. Wasn't very long, but it wasn't supposed to be. Although Mustafa Ali is even still in WWE, but Gunther, who was on an incredible run, he's on one of the greatest Intercontinental Championship runs ever. His reign continues. Raw Women's Championship, Bianca Belair versus Asuka. Asuka defeated Bianca, and she is the new Raw Women's Champion. I think the right move. I thought Asuka should have beat Bianca at WrestleMania. That was a letdown having Bianca retain, and that match I thought was kind of sloppy. I didn't think it was as good as I thought it would be, and some people said it was. This was a very good match, and Asuka's the champ. I think this makes up for that match. I think they realize, oh crap, we messed up. Bianca's over pushed, but Asuka is the Raw Women's champ. SmackDown Women's Championship, Rhea Ripley against Natalya. Rhea Ripley retained. No surprise there. And then Brock Lesnar versus Cody Rhodes. Brock Lesnar won. He locked Cody in the Kimura, and eventually Cody passed out. I thought that was a good match. And I don't mind Brock winning. These two this has been a very fierce rivalry. And just continues the story. And then the main event was the Undisputed Tag Team Championship. Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn against Roman Reigns and Solo Sikoa. At one point, the Usos came out to try to help them. I think Jey Uso, he accidentally hit Sikoa, and Roman was like shoving him and get out of the ring. And then Jimmy Uso super kicked Roman Reigns and turned on him. Jey Uso was freaking out, like, what the heck are you doing? And Jimmy Uso said, trust me, it's what you should have done a long time ago, and super kicked him again. And then KO and Sami end up winning. An incredible match. This Bloodline storyline gets better and better. One of the greatest storylines in the history of the company. It was overall, I think, a really good pay-per-view, Night of Champions. That's all I got. I got for you guys today. Until next time, so long. Have a great day.